Saga of the Swamp Thing, number 28, cover date September 1984. This issue takes place after the events of the prior three issues where the Swamp Thing and the Demon join forces to defeat supernatural being known as the Monkey King. Also opens new questions as to what Matt Cable is all about. That's Abigail's husband. So this is sort of like a filler issue, but because it's Alan Moore, he doesn't do filler issues, and actually the events that are in this comic will actually be relevant maybe 4 or 5 issues in the future. So it starts off, it's a pretty simple story. Sean McManus is the guest artist here. I guess to give Steve Bissett and John Tolbin a break and also allow them to work some time. They're going to be doing a double-sized issue very soon. It's called The Burial. So he's digging a hole or a grave, and he's talking here about how he's talking with Abigail, and they're just conversing. They're close friends, and he's asking her, how's Matt doing? He says, oh, Matt's been doing much better lately. You know, this is after the events of where, when he was in the car crash, that fly creature said, hey, look, let me just come on in and I can take care of everything. And all of a sudden, Matt recovered from the injuries from that crash. So they're out in the swamp. And as they're out in the swamp, Swamp Thing sees the ghost of Alec Holland. And you see how she's talking, and he's got this shocked look on his face. And she refers to him as Alec, and he's like, don't call me Alec. I'm not Alec. I never was. And then it's a flashback, and then he comes back, and he's digging this hole, and then he's talking about how they flash back, and he's like looking for the spirit, and he sees it. Spirit doesn't say anything. He's walking after it. It's sort of like leading him somewhere. And it leads him to the house that was their laboratory, that where the events of Swamp Thing 1, the first appearance of Swamp Thing occurred, when there was an explosion, the fire, and the events that led to the Swamp Thing being formed. So as he's here, Swamp Thing also has a flashback of a moment between Alec Holland and his wife Linda. And then the house is empty. And then he's doing a flashback of the moment where these criminals come in, knock Alec Holland out, and there's an explosion of fire, and he's like telling them, no, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. You know, find it. And of course he doesn't. There's the explosion. Swamp Thing relives this. And then going back to burying this, digging this hole in the ground. Then as he approaches the swamp next to where the house is, he's flashing back. He sees an apparition that's the original Swamp Thing. And this is the way the Swamp Thing looked like pre-Alan Moore. This is the way he looks like now post-Alan Moore, and he still looks like that. So the Swamp Thing's just asking him questions. He's pointing. It's sort of a little bit like the ghost of Christmas Future. Just egging him on, and he's telling him to go into the lake. And in the lake, he finds Alec Holland's skeleton. And he picks up the skeleton, and he buries it. And as he buries it, Alec Holland's ghost is smiling, at peace, and then just awakes. He goes, I know that he's smiling, but I'm not going to go look. And that's it. And again, this is like a fill-in issue. Not really a lot happens. It furthers the story a little bit about Swamp Thing having to do with Alec Holland. It furthers a little bit of what's going on with Abigail, but not a lot. This is like a fill-in issue. But again, it's an Alan Moore fill-in issue. So these events will come up. And it reminds me a lot of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, where something happens as an innocuous character, and then maybe 30 issues later they become relevant. And I'm not saying Neil Gaiman got that idea from Alan Moore, but I'm just saying that Neil Gaiman can definitely do the same thing Alan Moore does with that regard in those comics. And that's really it. The next arc is all the events we've been seeing, leading up with Matt Cable, leading up with that fly creature, leading up with the sinister hand behind the events of the Monkey King. All that come to fruition. and it's pretty good stuff. Thanks.